What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of Cineverse here on Hyper RPG. It's a two-man team today.
Yeah, Elizabeth's got a big killer meeting happening. So by the time you see this, obviously the meeting would have already happened. But go
true.
wish her luck. Ford Prefix Kid at Gmail. Jesus, I'm so used to those signs-offs. Just support Prefix Kid. I mean, I think that is her Gmail. So, but whatever. Like, I don't know how often she checks that one. Before Prefix Kid on Twitter. And also, she put out a reel. So anybody watching this that does casting and stuff like that, go check her acting reel out. I tweeted it. She tweeted it. It's all out there and it's pretty good. And she also picked the required viewing for next week. So yeah, but we wanted to make sure we weren't taking too long of a break between the last episode, which was a Kaya place, because Adam had to go to a wedding. We all got busy and we were like, well, did we postpone again? And it was like, nah, let's do the thing. Also because like there wasn't really any movies to talk about. I mean, Avengers obviously came out and you guys covered that. Elizabeth has seen Avengers. She's going to talk about her opinion on that next week, which I'll be looking forward to. But there wasn't really a movie last week. So it kind of felt like, okay, so we're doing more of a roundup kind of a thing. Like, what have you seen? What have I seen? Jumping into required viewing about what next week's going to be. And then we're also going to do a trailer reaction to Predator, The Predator, Shane Black's new film.
Finally, trailer.
From Shane Black and Fred Dekker. Fred Dekker, for those of you who don't know, did Monster Squad with Shane Black back in the day. I think that's Shane Black's first writing credit, maybe, is Monster Squad. It's what got him Lethal Weapon and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So that's going to be exciting. So we're going to do that a little bit later, but
then we're going to rush off to a screening of Deadpool 2.
Yeah, we got a 50-minute drive ahead of us. Century City to go see early screening of Deadpool 2.
God help us.
So that'll be fun. It'll be fine. But doing a movie roundup. Adam, you've seen a couple things. There's one thing you're going to talk about that we're going to dive into deeper next week.
We will. Yeah. I had a chance to see Lynn Ramsey's new movie, You Were Never Really Here, starring Joaquin Phoenix. She wrote and directed it. Last year at the Cannes Film Festival, it actually got apparently like a 7-minute standing ovation. It won Best Screenplay for her and Best Actor for Joaquin Phoenix. I'll give you kind of the basic premise of the movie. He is a former. They don't really exactly say what part of the armed forces he's a part of, but he is formerly part of the armed forces. He's also formerly an FBI agent, and he's suffering from PTSD, and he lives with his elderly mother. I believe it's New York. But basically, he's a hired gun who basically goes around and he tries to rescue women who are being trafficked. He gets hired by a New York State senator to retrieve his daughter, and crazy bloodbath and action and craziness sort of ensues. You get to see sort of what happens after the fact, and he uncovers a lot of stuff that is happening in New York. A lot of shady, crooked stuff is going on politically, and how he sort of gets wrapped in the middle of it and what happens sort of to his circle because of that. It's incredibly well shot, incredibly well acted. Lynn Ramsey studied, I believe she was a photographer initially before she was a filmmaker, and you can definitely tell, and you can definitely see her influence on the cinematography. This is definitely a movie that looks like a photograph captured at 24 frames. It just looks like a whole sequence of images. It's so incredibly well shot. So incredibly well directed. The production design is great. The costume design, even though it's very minimal, it definitely lends itself incredibly well to sort of the look and the feel of the movie. It kind of has a timeless feel as well. But the action, when there is action, it's very edge of your seat. This movie is crazy. This movie is insane. I got to see it a couple weeks ago with a friend of mine, and the movie ended, the credits rolled. We sat through all 8-9 minutes of the credits, and we were just kind of sitting there just kind of in awe of mostly the imagery and the music, and how there's not a whole lot of dialogue in this movie, but it's just so incredibly well driven by the character, the motivation, the action, and it is very brutal, and I loved it for that, and it was so great. They show you the PTSD that this character goes through and how it sort of reflects or mirrors what he's seeing in his modern day. It's really well done, but yeah, we'll definitely dive into it more.
Yeah, we're going to do a more full spoilery kind of review next week. The main thing I keep hearing about the movie, and I'm very much looking forward to it because I've loved Lynn Ramsey's other work, is some people who've seen it kind of said like, oh, it felt like a kind of a really well done, kind of but slightly generic revenge man on fire film, and then the last 20 minutes seems to
that's
be the
what
thing
I will
that
say.
Makes a lot of people go
without spoiling anything. I will say the first 30 minutes. I don't want to say it moves slow, but it definitely has like a slower pace to it.
Right.
But then once we get into the sort of like the first action bit, and I should say this movie doesn't have crazy action sequences, but there is action in it.
Sure.
Once it gets going, this movie moves really, really well. And because of sort of the way it's shot, that really helps kind of push the pacing and pushed the movie forward in a great direction. And I would say, yeah, from there on out, the pacing I think is extremely well done.
Awesome. Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. And we are going to talk about it more next week.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to check to make sure it's still playing after tomorrow because tomorrow's Friday.
Yeah,
and
that's
so
true.
A lot of movies can kind of get.
Yeah, especially this movie. Unfortunately, this movie, you know, I know it has a really small release compared to a lot of other movies that have been coming out, because it mostly is a very, very independent film. And I'm not sure how small the budget it is,
Right.
but it is a pretty small budget. And I think it only ended up making about, I think so far it's only broke about $5 million, which is unfortunate because I think it's a really, really good artistic movie, but I can see how it's not for sort of the general audience.
Yeah, I think at the moment, I'm going to look to see how many theaters it's playing at, like, just today.
Yeah, it's not a lot.
Even when it opened, I think it was, like, at the ArcLights and, like, 2 or 3 art house theaters. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I was playing here at the Lemley Theater in NoHo, and I do know, yeah, it's been playing at the ArcLight. But that's the thing, because it has probably, like, a shorter run or smaller sort of theatrical distribution, it's probably limited to how many theaters it's in, not only nationwide, but also even here in Los Angeles, and it probably has a very limited time. Especially now, we're getting into the summer season. You know, Avengers: Infinity War just came out. We're about to hit. Han Solo is about to come out. Deadpool is obviously about to come out. So a lot of these smaller movies, they're going to have a much smaller and smaller and smaller window of time that they're actually going to be out in theater. So if you do find a theater that has this movie playing near you, definitely give it a watch. I think I really
still going to be at
it.
the Los Feliz 3 tomorrow. So
okay, cool.
I will be able to. We are going to talk about it.
Yeah. It's definitely.
I was like, oh god, it's tonight.
Yeah,
is
this
it?
Is this it?
Because that has happened. There's been times where it's like, I'm going to go see this really cool art house movie. I've been dying to go see. It's Thursday. I'm going to go tomorrow, and then I'll check to see, and it's out of theaters.
Yep.
Like it's nowhere, or maybe like one theater deep in the heart of like LA.
Yeah,
and I'm like, I don't even know where that is. And I've been born here. So cool. We're going to talk about that more next week, and we'll get into why when we talk about required viewing. So I'll shoot one over to me. I've been doing a lot of, I've been busy with a lot of like photography stuff and things like that. So I haven't been able to go to the theaters much. So I've been doing a lot of like at home watching.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Hey man, I just popped in Black Panther last night.
Oh man.
I've been listening to audio commentary.
Ooh, that's actually something I've been doing. I'll get into that a little bit later too. Is like I'm watching a lot of movies with audio commentaries. But doing a lot of documentary watching, which I really enjoy doing. And so I want to talk about LA 92, which came out last year. It's from National Geographic, and was released in theaters. And it is it's about the LA riots in 1992, and it is all, there's no talking heads. It is all either the story is told either through news footage or found camera footage.
Okay.
Like people's home videos and stuff like that. There's a great 30 for 30 about the O.J. Simpson Bronco chase. And it's from the director of Montage of Heck, the Kurt Cobain documentary. He directed the film, and it tells the entire story of the Bronco chase and sports on that day through changing channels. And
oh wow!
Because a lot of people don't know about the Bronco chase, which is it's so fascinating. In sports, it was like one of the biggest days in sports was like the Bronco chase was happening at the same time in New York. The Knicks were in the NBA Finals. Arnold Palmer was having his last game, and the New York Rangers were had the Stanley Cup March parade.
OJ, y'all fucked it up for everybody.
All on the same day. So it kept the way he did that movie was jumping, like as if he was jumping through channels.
Wow.
And going to like,
interesting.
So this is a little similar in that there's no talking heads. No one comes up to be like, oh man, I remember when blah, 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 blah. It just is showing you like news footage and all this stuff. There's a couple title cards, but not many, mostly just kind of setting the scene in the beginning. And then you are learning about LA and the police force in like 91, the Rodney King trial, the riots, and you go through the riots and they go through different sections of LA. If all you know about the LA riots is maybe Rodney King or like footage that a lot of the footage they'll show is like the truck driver pulled out of his truck and hit in the head, and then that's usually what they will show anytime they show anything from the riots. This then had like footage that someone was videotaping on a handheld camera of the truck driver after on the road. I will say, if you are squeamish, it's a brutal movie. Like there's violence, there's dead bodies and stuff like that. It is National Geographic, so it's very
accurate,
very in your face. It's harrowing. It also shows all the again through news footage and stuff like that, different complex sides of why the riots happened, what they were about. George Bush Sr., the first Bush president, his response to it, and then people's response to that response in churches and things like that. It's really, really well done. It's really great. I think if you are someone who's interested in just history in general, or especially the time we're living in now, race history, why certain things happen the way they do, what they mean, the aftermath and things like that. LA 92, it's on Netflix. It can be. I will say it's what, like, I like hard watch movies. I like movies and things that are like difficult and you have to wrestle with, and maybe they're violent or harrowing and all these kinds of things. So I loved it. It left me like I'm still thinking about it 2 weeks removed from it. A lot of different scenes and moments and things like that. And it is the kind of movie, the minute it's over, you start Googling names to be like, what happened to that person? Where's this person now? Is this person still in the government? Is this? But yeah, it's great. Very, very harrowing. LA 92. I know that was like one of 2 or 3 different, because it was the anniversary, the 25th anniversary last year. So there was a lot of like little documentaries that came out. And I think, from my understanding, LA 92 was the kind of the cream that rose to the crop, because there was like Deadline and stuff like that, where it was like, LA riots 25 years later, we talked to the people. And then it's NBC, so it's like nice and it's glossy, but you're not like, oh, how in depth. So there's stuff like that. But yeah, LA 92.
That sounds super intriguing. Yeah, especially I sort of appreciate documentaries that are brave enough to sort of tackle the brutality of what happens in a scenario like that, because I think you're right. I think networks like NBC, ABC, all that sort of stuff, they do kind of gloss over it, and they try to paint the best picture, the best case scenario of what happened out of those sort of situations. But I think historically, we all know those situations are terrible. There's a lot of horrible historic, a lot of terrible things that have happened, including, there are movies who try to push the boundaries of what have happened in certain world wars, even not world wars, other wars that have happened, Vietnam and all that sort of stuff. And I like hearing that this is a documentary, especially when it's someone like National Geographic, this big organization, this big company, and they're willing to sort of go, you know what, we have to just be truthful to what this situation really was. So it's good to hear. I definitely want to check that out and discuss it more if possible.
Yeah, so that was a big one for me. Anything else on you?
No, I think that's kind of it. Well, so I was at this wedding, so I was busy for about almost a week.
Right.
But I did like a movie night, and I ended up watching a few movies. Scream 3 and a few other things. Mission Impossible was on.
Scream 3. That's the one where it's like, of the 4 Scream films, like that 3's the one where I'm like, ooh. And maybe I'm wrong. It's been like almost maybe 10 years since I've seen it.
It's real goofy.
Maybe I'd watch it now and be like, oh, it's fun. But like at the time, I'm like, I remember walking out of it. And then years later, watching it again, being like, I don't like this movie.
it honestly, it's so funny because they make a joke about, they make a reference to Scary Movie, and then we got all the Scary Movies.
Yeah.
This feels like Scary Movie to me.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's real ridiculous. But yeah, other than that, no. I've been watching. I just got the Blu-ray for Black Panther. I watched some of the special features. There's an incredible 20-minute roundtable discussion with Ta-Nehisi Coates, Ryan Coogler, Christopher Priest, Nate Moore, who's the producer, and Joe Robert Cole, who's the co-writer of Black Panther. Really, really good, talking about sort of the legacy of Black Panther and what it means to this generation. What Ryan Coogler did that was really innovative. Now I'm going through the audio commentary. I'm about halfway through the movie and getting some really good insight. Like, for example, the apartment building where they shot the opening of the movie with Sterling K. Brown and the young Zuri. That's actually shot across the street. It's a shot in Atlanta, across the street from the church where Dr. Martin Luther King was buried.
Oh, wow.
And I guess on the first day of principal photography, Dr. King's daughter came to the set and blessed the set.
That's
so
crazy.
That was huge. Ryan Coogler. It's Ryan Coogler and the production designer Hannah. I think it's Hannah Beachler, who are talking throughout the whole movie and how they designed everything. It's a really, really good director's commentary, and I'll definitely touch on it more in the coming days once I finish it. We can discuss it more.
Yeah, so I can segue into that. Like, I've been listening to a couple of commentaries because when I'm working on like editing or photo stuff, it's kind of easy to throw on commentaries because it's
very
like
easy.
You just listen while you're working, and
it's like a podcast.
Yeah. So I listened to the 2 Captain America commentaries, Winter Soldier and Civil War, which is the Russo brothers with the writers, and those are fun. Those are really kind of informative, and those do feel like podcasts. Like, I think a good commentary does feel like a podcast where you don't need the visual. A bad commentary is like, in this scene, this is what happens. You're like, well, I gotta be watching the thing.
Yeah.
So those are really great. Hi, Ninja. Those are really, really 2 great commentaries that I highly recommend. Really flowed really well. I think it's also because it's a group, so it helped.
For sure.
Because like some commentaries that like have one director, can be really good.
Yeah.
But some of them can be a little rough. My favorite actually commentaries are probably Ridley Scott's. Ridley Scott commentaries are
Very in depth.
yeah. Oh, and he just goes. He just talks and talks.
The one thing I will say about the Black Panther commentary, the one other person I wish was in it was Rachel Morrison, and I don't know because she was shooting.
Yeah, she might have been busy. Yeah.
But that's the one other thing that I would have loved. Otherwise, so far it's a great commentary.
Sure. The recent commentary too, totally different than any of the Marvel movies. I was listening to the John Carpenter commentary from Prince of Darkness, which has him and one of the actors from the movie, and this commentary gave me life. Because the actor was not trying to be a dick at all. And John Carpenter did not respond like he was trying to be a dick, but I think it was just more like buddies having fun. But there's scenes in Prince of Darkness. If you haven't seen Prince of Darkness, see Prince of Darkness. It's great. It's one of my favorite John Carpenter movies. The stuff just starts happening because it's a devil movie or an Antichrist movie. So these crazy things start happening. And at some point, like there's a guy who walks by and stuff like that in the frame and all this other stuff. And the actor goes to John Carpenter. He goes, "Who is that guy? Where did he come from?" And John Carpenter's like, "I don't know. The movie's not about him." And then there's a scene with all these worms, and the actor goes like, "How'd those worms get there?" And John Carpenter goes, "I thought it'd be a cool shot." And I just love that it's like in today's movie age, in cinema sins would have a field day with John Carpenter movies, and he'd probably be like, "Fuck off." It was great where he's just like, "I just thought it'd be cool." I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's true. I mean, I would think that a lot of times, especially directors back in the 70s and 80s, they just wanted to experiment and have fun and make the filmmaking experience what they're doing
and
enjoyable.
The thing about what's the story I'm telling, and does this matter?
Yeah.
That kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So that commentary gave me life.
That's awesome.
But staying on the filmmaking thing, I did watch another documentary. Actually, watched 2 documentaries on filmmaking, which I really enjoyed. One of them was, I'm looking at my phone to get the title correct, 7852, which is it's 78/52. It's from the director, I believe, who did People versus George Lucas.
Oh, okay.
And Doc of the Dead, which is a documentary on the Dead series by George Romero. I was not big on either of those 2 documentaries, but I kept hearing people go on. Let me actually make sure that's the same guy because I don't want to be wrong about that. But anyway, this film is about specifically the shower scene from Psycho. And 7852 refers to 78 cuts, 52 shots or something like that. It's like the number of cuts and the number of shots.
Oh, interesting.
And I might have that number wrong, but so it's a lot of like talking heads in the movie discussing the time in which that film came out, what the shots meant. Guillermo del Toro's in it. Elijah Wood is in it.
Oh, cool.
Walter Murch. Walter Murch is Francis Ford Coppola's editor. Walter Murch also made Return to Oz, his one film he ever directed. And they go through that scene and discuss shot composition and what it means and how. And it's very interesting to watch because they literally go through it like clip by clip after like talking about the film up to that point, who Janet Leigh was, and even if you know all this stuff, it's kind of interesting to hear all the context, especially from people like Guillermo del Toro and like who Hitchcock was at this time and all these other things. And so they talk about, and then so Walter Murch starts breaking down the scene, and there's cuts when it's like they're going like clip by clip, and it's like. The shot will be on Janet Leigh, and then like the next shot will be her, almost to the same angle but slightly turned. And he goes, "You would never normally do a shot like this. You would never edit it like this because it disorientates an audience." He goes, "But that's the point of this scene, and that's why you do it." He goes, and what was great to hear Walter Murch talk about horror scenes and love scenes. He said these are the 2 scenes where it's okay to break the 180 line. Because it's supposed to make the audience feel what the characters are feeling. And for those who don't know what the 180 line is, maybe a lot of you do know, but if you don't know, the 180 line is basically, it's they call it also the stage line. It's basically the 4th wall. So it's about like, where are you placing your camera so that your audience consistently knows like where the characters are, what's happening. But a lot of movies will break that line to disorientate. Another famous line breaking scene is The Shining, the bathroom scene in The Shining. The bathroom scene in The Shining when Jack Nicholson's talking to the Grady character, that breaks the 180 line constantly because you're supposed to feel like he's talking to a ghost. What's happening? In this film, the scene they use for a romance scene is the scene in Ghost between Patrick Swayze and Demi Moore when they're kissing and stuff like that in the beginning. And he said like those are the 2 times you want to break the 180 line is romantic scenes or because you're supposed to feel swept up and like you're in it and all this other stuff, or horror scenes. So it was great, and it really breaks everything down. It's shot in black and white. They talked to Anthony Perkins' son, I didn't realize has directed 2 films that are both on Netflix that are great.
Oh, really?
Black Coat's Daughter. Actually, I only say one of them is great. I haven't seen the other one, but it looks really good. But the Black Coat's Daughter on Netflix, Oz Perkins, really, really great stuff. He talks about it as well. They do talk to even the people who made the Psycho remake. Gus Van Zant's not in it, but his editor is.
Gotcha.
And stuff like that, and they talk about it. So 7852, it's on Hulu.
Oh, okay.
Really, really, really love that.
Is it new? Because I've never heard of it.
It came out last year. It was on
okay.
It was on the festival scene and stuff like that, like this time last year. And I'm still trying to grab this filmmaker's name. Why is there not a very clear Eli Roth? Eli Roth is another one.
Oh, that's cool.
Who's in this? So yeah, there's a lot of great talking heads if you're into horror and genre and stuff like that. Who Hitchcock was, what he meant. Alexandre O'Philippe. Yep, it is. It's the same guy. Yeah, he did People vs. and Dock of the Dead. So yeah,
Nice.
This is his best movie. It's really, really good. Actually, really good.
So is it kind of like an audio commentary over the whole movie, or is it just talking about that one shower scene?
No, it talks about that one shower. It talks about like leading up to the shower scene, like why the scene works and who it's obviously stuff people have talked about where it's like you think the main character is Janet Leigh
Right.
and it's Anthony Perkins actually and this, that, and the other. But it also talks about like why it works in the context of Hitchcock and that Hitchcock grew up Catholic, but he also had this kind of dark worldview, and that Janet Leigh deciding, spoilers for Psycho, that she was going to take the money back and do the right thing didn't fucking matter. She died brutally anyway, and the money got thrown into the river.
Yeah, it's true.
None of it mattered. You decided to do, and then Guillermo talked about that, and he said the whole like, oh, I'm deciding to actually do the right thing, and I'm going to absolve myself of my sins. Didn't matter.
Yeah, nice.
So it talks about all that, and then that really dissects the shower scene.
Yeah,
yeah, it's great.
I do like videos like that where, and I think Cineverse does it a lot, where they will look at a scene or a sequence of scenes that are similar from various movies. They'll look at it and they'll talk about, why did the director make these choices? What does it add to the movie? What does it what kind of perspective does it give you about the movie, the character, the scenes, all that sort of stuff? I love having movies or videos about that sort of a thing, and those are things that I really like to watch because I'm always interested in camera movement and composition and how we use lighting and where we place actors compared to the backdrops and what's sort of about all that sort of stuff. I really like that sort of a thing. I know a lot of people talk about how doing that sort of thing can for some people ruin the movie magic. For me, it kind of enhances it, honestly.
I think it depends. It could depend on if you're someone who wants to make movies and you're like, but I know Spielberg, for example, doesn't do commentaries for that reason.
Yeah.
He's like, I don't want to ruin it for people.
Right.
So,
which I totally get.
And so staying on the filmmaking trip, I also watched Along for the Ride by Nick Ebling. It's a documentary about Dennis Hopper's right-hand man. Like, so it's essentially Dennis Hopper's, I don't want to say like assistant because that doesn't feel correct. He even refers to himself as the right hand man. Stala, he meets Dennis Hopper during the making of Easy Rider. Easy Rider comes out and just explodes cinema and is basically like, oh my God, you can make small movies. You don't need the studio system, this, that, and the other. If you don't know the impact Easy Rider truly had, I highly recommend the book Easy Rider and Raging Bulls, which kind of tracks that whole era. And the next thing that happened was then Hollywood so then he gets nominated, Dennis Hopper gets nominated for screenplay, the film gets nominated for Best Picture and all this other stuff. And so he becomes like the new big hot thing, and all the studios want to work with him. So he goes to do this movie called The Last Movie, and he goes down to Peru and shoots this film that's supposed to be this kind of meta commentary about movies and what they mean and all this other stuff. And he then he has Final Cut. And he goes and becomes so cantankerous. It was with Universal. Becomes so cantankerous and fights with Universal and all this other stuff that Universal. And even though the film ends up winning a Venice Film Festival award for like best film, and at that time I think it was the only American film to do so. They put it in New York, one screen in New York. The critics didn't like it, and so it bombed. And Dennis Hopper was essentially blacklisted from Hollywood for the next 10, 15 years. He only gets to do movies in Australia, and no one wants to work with him. He gets to do Apocalypse Now and stuff like that, but it's not until specifically 1980 he gets to direct a movie again, so almost 10-something years later, he gets to direct another movie that similarly got kind of shelved and put away. He goes to rehab, and it's not till 1986 when he does Blue Velvet, Hoosiers, which he gets nominated for, and a couple other films that then it's like, oh, Dennis Hopper, he's back. So the film kind of tracks Stallo's relationship with Hopper, who he was. It talks about Dennis Hopper's photography, all of his friends, and there's a lot of. I will say there's not, which this is not the point of the film, so it doesn't bother me. But there's not a, there's no dissenting opinions on him. Everyone they talk to is like, he was this genius who, did genius work, and could you imagine what he could have done if he wasn't blacklisted and this, that, and the other? Sure, he had a drinking problem and can be cantankerous, but what genius artist isn't? I can see that bothering some people. All that said, though, I really enjoyed it. Really watchable film. It's really interesting to kind of look at somebody through the eye of someone who worked with them for 40 years.
Yeah.
Kind of a thing. So there is kind of like, and the main chunk of it is the 70s and 80s. Once it gets to like right after Hoosiers, once it gets to the 90s, and it's like Speed and True Romance and stuff like
Mario Brothers.
Yeah, then it's pretty all kind of like they don't even talk about Mario Brothers. They don't even talk about Speed.
Yeah.
They touch on Hoosiers. True Romance is touched on in the beginning, but everything else is kind of boom, boom, boom. Like they do a pretty. If you didn't know who Dennis Hopper was for whatever reason, you would think he just did like in the 90s, like, oh, he got nominated for the Academy Award and got to do a bunch of art films with vendors and stuff like that. They really do kind of skirt away from certain things, but that's also on Hulu. Along for the Ride, worth watching. The only downside, and it's not the movie's fault, is the last film, the movie that so much of the film is concentrated on talking about, and that ruined his career and all this other stuff. Dennis Hopper was able to get the rights to before he died, and was working on a special release, and then died. And so as of right now, I think the rights to that film are, I don't think you can really see it.
It's in murky water somewhere.
Yeah, it's one of those things. So maybe someday, but worthy a documentary, I think worth going and checking out. And if it gets you interested in checking out some of Hopper's films from the 70s you might not be familiar with, like the Vim Vendor stuff, I think it's worth a look.
That sounds like again, all about perspective. It sounds like a really cool opportunity to talk about someone who was very creative, was a genius, but done through the eyes of somebody very close to them.
And also for our generation who probably does, frankly, if you say Dennis Hopper, maybe you think True Romance, but you might mostly make Mario Brothers jokes.
Yeah.
If you even are familiar with the name.
Yeah.
So it kind of is able to be like, no, look, this guy kind of changed movies. You just might not know it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you've heard of Easy Rider, but you haven't seen it.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the main things I watched. So let's talk about next week before we get into this Predator review and why we're going to be talking about You Were Never Really Here. So I think next week we're going to talk about Tully.
Yep.
We're going to talk about Charlize Theron, Jason Reitman's new movie with Diablo Cody writing. So it's the team that did Young Adult, which I really liked. I wasn't big on Juno, but I really liked Young Adult. So excited about that. So because that was the pick, Elizabeth had said, hey, why don't we do Let's Talk About Kevin? Because me and Elizabeth love that movie. And she's like, it's a movie about moms and stuff like that, and that can be a tie-in. And I said, well, that's great because Lynn Ramsey has a new movie out. Elizabeth had no idea. And she's like, oh, well, you should talk about that too. And I'm like, yeah, we should. So we're going to be talking about next week. Our two main reviews are going to be Tully and You Were Never Really Here. And our required viewing is We Need to Talk About Kevin. So go check out We Need to Talk About Kevin. Tilda Swinton, John C. Reilly, and Ezra Miller.
Yeah. Is it on Netflix still?
I don't know. I know it was on Amazon for a long time.
Maybe it was Amazon then, yeah.
But worth a get. I have the Blu-ray. I love that movie. That was the first time I ever experienced watching a movie and a young teenage girl taking out her phone to take a photo of a shirtless Ezra Miller. And I was like, what the hell?
What the hell is happening? That's too funny.
So I was like, and then apparently that happened to a couple people who saw Dunkirk because of Harry Styles. I heard a couple of people had that experience.
Interesting.
And I was like, man.
Okay.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, whoa.
I haven't seen Let's Talk About Kevin yet, but after seeing You Were Never Really Here, it's a movie that's been like on my watch list for a while now because I didn't know Ezra Miller prior to him being cast as the Flash.
Yeah.
So when he was cast, that was the only movie at that time that was sort of had like a big enough, I don't know, sort of notoriety, I guess. So I haven't watched it, so I really want to check that out as well, obviously, because we're going to talk about it next week. But I really am excited to see Tully. I watched the trailer for it, and a little bit of a behind the scenes, and there was interviews with Jason Reitman, Charlize Theron talking about sort of like motherhood in general. So I'm really curious to see what this movie ends up being, and how I can potentially relate to it. It seems really good.
Yeah, and there's some other cool stuff coming out this week. I know Revenge is coming out, which has gotten a lot of cool talk. If you haven't seen the trailers to Revenge, they're worth watching. There's an advert that has like revenge from the opinion of men on the internet, and so it's taking YouTube comments.
Bless those.
The Revenge's reviews have been really good. I think it's only playing in one theater right now, so we might hold off on that one. John Woo has a new movie on Netflix that I'm really excited to see. I would really love to talk about Dirty Computer, the Janelle Monáe music video film that's like 45 minutes long.
Oh, I did hear about that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, I did watch This Is America though by Childish Gambino.
Which is great.
That was
amazing. That's
amazing.
I would love to bring on
Again, I was gone. I was at a wedding. And I was going through my Instagram feed and I saw Army Hammer reposted a clip of it. I'm like, what is this new song?
Yeah.
I went and I watched it and I was blown away by that music video. It was really good.
Yeah, I'd love to bring on like Iffy and a couple other people and do like a real deep dive on both those things. But yeah, so next week, 100% is going to be You Remember Really Here. We need to talk about Kevin and Tully. Yeah. So go check those out. If you've seen any of the stuff we talked about today, any of those things or the documentaries, if they interest you, let us know in the comments down below, because this is the summer, and obviously Cineverse, we want to try and talk about the other movies. So sometimes there are those times where it's like, oh, there's like a lot of other little movies, and sometimes there's not. So also let us know in the comments of movies like maybe on Netflix, or if there's stuff coming down the pike you want us to talk about.
Sure.
And we'll try and make a point of that.
Even like I love the fact that we got to spend some time talking about audio commentaries, and like that's something I would like to do more of, because again, it gives you a little more insight into the movie, and not everyone's going to sit there and listen to audio commentary, which is understandable. You want to watch the movie. But I like listening to them, picking out little things that you may not have known. I would love to do more of that. Yep.
Yeah, and that's always fun. And I love talking about movies in general. Because news-wise, and we've kind of talked about, you guys have kind of run into this with Hyperheroes, is like a lot of the news, well, now that Avengers is out, a lot of the news is how well Avengers is doing. Yeah. But even prior to that, like, kind of like movie news, there hasn't really been like...
It's always little things.
Bombs. And not that there needs to be bombs to have things to discuss, but you want to have something to talk about. And I feel like a lot of movie websites are, and which is great, talking about This Is America and Dirty Computer. Yeah. Because I feel like movie stuff, there's not really much news.
Right now the Cannes Film Festival is happening as well.
Yes, which we'll probably hear some great stuff.
Yeah, so I'm sure there will be things that we'll hopefully be able to discuss, movies and new previews for new movies. I know there's some summer releases coming, like Hereditary, that are coming out that we definitely want to cover.
We're covering that.
So there's definitely a lot of stuff. But I do like the idea of, talking about other things, like, talking about This Is America and other things like that. I think it's all part of the entertainment. It's all part of things that we love. So why not discuss it?
And we will. I will say right now, because I'm sure there are comments will be there. We will get people of color to talk about that with us, because it'd be irresponsible not to.
Exactly.
Like very much so. So those things we're going to talk about. So other than that, let's look at this Predator teaser. So. For those of you who don't know, The Predator, written and directed by Shane Black and co-written with Fred Dekker. This is the first time they've worked together since Monster Squad, so 1987. Woof, man. And I love Monster Squad. That's one of my favorite movies of all time. Whenever I show that movie to people go, that's a very Cameron movie. And they're right.
That means I'm going to love it.
The very interesting thing about this was Fox had come to Shane Black about wanting to do it, and he's been pretty public in these interviews. And he basically said... He's like, the problem is you guys treat it like a B picture. He's like, at the end of the day, you guys treat it like a B thing. I don't want to do it unless you can really like give it some oomph and make it feel like an event. And they said, oh, we will. So this is kind of the first we're seeing of that, if it feels like an event. Secondly, also, I guess it's worth noting Shane Black was in the original Predator.
He was in the original Predator.
He openly talks about that he did no writing on it, that they hired him as an actor because they were hoping he would do some rewrites, and he's like, I didn't touch that script. Now, that's been debated whether or not people feel that's true, because Predator 2 is the same screenwriters, and Predator 2 is Predator 2. I like aspects of Predator 2, but it's fun. It's very different. So, think of that as you will. That doesn't mean Shane Black maybe didn't improvise a lot of his lines, but...
For sure.
It is what it is. The Predator. Let's check this out.
Yeah, I'm so curious about this. I love you, Jacob Tremblay, but what have you done? Okay.
Tell me about the mission. Did you see anything unusual?
Like an alien, you mean?
You saw something.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And your men? Someone or something tore them to pieces.
I think they're attempting hybridization. They're upgrading on every planet they visit.
We need to know if you pose a threat.
We're assassins. Isn't posing a threat kind of the point?
Okay, it's a teaser.
Yeah.
It's a teaser.
Yeah, it definitely is a teaser. I'm also very surprised at how they chose to reveal the Predator. There really is no moment to reveal the Predator. We all know what a Predator looks like, but at this point, it's been 30
Yeah, I
31
guess maybe
years.
that's sort of the thing. Is like, is there a degree of like no bullshit?
I guess.
Yeah, I wonder. So I will say I don't mind the setup of like fucked up ET, which is like
That's
a
kinda
little
what it
kid,
feels like,
a little
right?
kid in suburbia, and his alien
Yay!
friend. Oh shit, it's a predator. As a setup, I don't
Yeah.
mind that. Yeah, it's interesting because right now this is not. Again, it's a teaser, so there's not really. You're not getting a lot of dialogue, which is what Shane Black is known for.
Yeah.
Is that kind of back and forth pithy dialogue. It's just kind of a lot of. It's the setup and then action scenes. I'm sure a lot of people on the internet are already going to have their snarko comments about like, who sends a kid predator stuff? But you got to have the context of the film.
Yeah,
that
you don't
I
know what's
know,
happening.
I don't know if it got sent to the kid. But
It looks like it was sent to Boyd Holbrook's character, who I guess maybe could be his father.
could be. But that's the thing. We don't know.
We don't
It's
know.
all teasers. Yeah, I mean, I will say, like, so I haven't seen this before, but I've seen, like, the comments already where some people
Yeah.
are like, oh, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't hate it. It's a teaser. It's a teaser. And it's more than just the title, which we've seen those teasers.
Right.
It's not
True,
it's
true.
not the Alan Silvestri do score
Yeah.
and then Predator directed by Shane Black.
Yeah.
Which like maybe would have gotten people more pumped. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I'm not free passing it, but it's I have like almost no real opinion because the stuff Shane Black is known for we're not seeing, which is
Yeah.
a lot of dialogue.
I'm kind of of the same opinion. I to be completely honest, I think this trailer would have honestly worked better if it would have just been 60 seconds long and it was just Jacob Tremblay controlling, opening the package, revealing, not
Sure.
necessarily seeing the helmet, and then seeing him manipulating the ship, and then when it crash lands, you get one or two lines of like he saw something out there, and then you just see the Predator.
Yeah.
One quick shot, and then it cuts to the title. To me, I think that would have been a more effective teaser and definitely been a teaser trailer. This kind of feels like it's a teaser trailer, but it's still trying to be over a minute and a half long.
Yeah,
I
no,
would have preferred just something short, sweet. I do like the fact that it gave us a tease of the brutality. That it looks like it's potential. I don't know if it's going to be rated R. I think that's what the plan is.
I think so.
And with showing that much blood in a teaser trailer, I'm like, okay, cool. They're trying to be a little more brutal with it, but I would have liked something maybe a little more darker and mysterious. I feel like this feels like half of a trailer almost.
yeah, I don't mind the forest setting.
No.
I kind of like that.
I think it's going to jump around between forest and suburbia, so that should be really interesting.
Yeah, which I kind of like. So if it takes place like in a Washington-y area,
Yeah.
I kind of like that. I really like the Predator series. I mean, the
Same.
first one's a classic. There's things about part two I like. I like that kind of Robert Rodriguez
Predators.
that he didn't direct. Who
It was I forget. It was one of the guys who works with him at Troublemaker.
Yeah, and I really like that movie, and I know a lot of people didn't, or a lot of people just kind of weren't big on it. I liked it. It was weird, and Lawrence Fishburne's giving like a weird performance that I kind of like. Yeah, there's a lot of things I like in the Predators. So I don't know. And again, it's Shane Black. He's not gone wrong for me. I don't think there's a Shane Black movie that he's either directed or written that I've disliked. So
I rewatched Nice Guys again.
Nice Guys is
So
great.
good.
I love Iron Man 3. I know Iron Man 3, but I love Iron Man 3. I don't give a shit. Come at me. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, and then Long Kiss Goodnight and stuff he's written. So
Yeah.
I'm excited about this at the end of the day. And there's also the case too, I think Birth Movies Death kind of talked about that this is different than what they were showing at CinemaCon.
It is.
But even CinemaCon didn't have a lot of Predator stuff, so people are
Yeah.
speculating that the movie doesn't come out till September. They might still be working on what the Predator. That doesn't say that's not to say the Predator's all CG, but there might be.
This definitely looked like it was
stuff.
practical.
Yeah.
I feel the same way. I love the Predator series, even though 2, yes, there it has its issues, but
And I'm not counting
enjoy
AVP.
Yeah, AVP is its own can of worms. But I do enjoy the character and sort of the mythology and all that sort of stuff. And I'm really excited about this movie, regardless of what this teaser trailer did or didn't show us, or how it sort of was presented. I'm still excited for this movie, and I can't wait to check it out. So
yeah, and if this means we're gonna get the original Predator, grain retained in 4K, I don't know if that's what that means, but I'm hopeful.
Still haven't watched that 3D version. I'm a little terrified.
Ooh, I've heard, I've not seen the 3D version, but I've seen the non-3D version, and everyone looks waxy.
Yep, a lot of DNR, a lot of DNR. So
Stop
we'll
doing
see.
that.
Yeah, quit removing grain.
Retain the grain. So yeah, I think that's going to bring us to the end of this Cineverse, guys. If you dug this trailer, or if you didn't, or anything like that, let us know. Are you excited even if you didn't dig the trailer? What are you thinking? Keegan is in this, which looks great. I love Keegan.
Yeah.
Olivia Munn, stuff like that. So let us know in the comments below. Adam, where can people find you online?
You can just find me all over the interwebs and here at Hyper at Adam Plavik.
Fantastic. As for me, you can find me on Twitter.com/Jurassic Alien. Go check out my horror show, Blood Curling Tales of Terror, that I do on Wednesdays, on Thursdays, Indomitable. And other than that, yeah. I have a Facebook page you can go like now. Cameron James Rice. Cameron James Rice. My mom would be like, you said too quickly. So go check that out. That's where I'm putting a lot of my photography and stuff like that. Stuff I'm directing and things of that nature. So go check that out. As well. And guys, go follow Elizabeth at Ford Prefix Kid on Twitter. And yeah, we will see you next week with You Were Never Really Here, Tully, and we need to talk about Kevin.
And
Have a good one.
And hopefully Deadpool 2 review.
Oh, and if you haven't done it yet, check out our Patreon.